Here are the parts and tools you're going to need to build a Faketec pager. Obviously you're going to need the PCB. This is like the rug that ties the room together. You're going to need the Pro Micro microcontroller, the brains of the operation. You're going to need the radio that actually does all the communication. Some pin headers. They come with the Pro Micro. The switch, an antenna, little pigtail antenna, a case that you can 3D print. Belt clip, it is optional, but I highly recommend it. This is a display that we won't be using at all for this build, but it is an option for the Faketec in general. You're going to need a pair of 1 mega ohm resistors. You can use through-hole ones like that, but we will actually be using these little surface mount ones instead. You will need a good pair of fine tweezers. You will need flux. I prefer paste style flux, but liquid flux is also an option. You'll need solder, obviously, and a soldering iron. I forgot to add it originally, but you will also need a battery. You can use a 1000 to 1200 milliamp hour single cell battery or even a PS4 controller battery. Now the first thing we're going to do is to bridge these two contacts on the back of the Pro Micro. This will allow the Pro Micro to charge the battery quickly and not take like a full day to charge the battery. The first thing you want to do for any soldering application is to cover it in flux. You're going to tin these two pads with the solder. Make sure you get a nice little dollop of solder attached to each pad. Then just take a little spare piece of wire or cut off from a resistor and bridge those two pads. Sorry I'm blocking a lot of these shots with my hands and things are going out of focus. I'm not a professional YouTuber. Just trim off the extra from the wire, whatever you used, so that it's not getting in the way of anything. So now we're going to do the surface mount resistors for the battery voltage divider. Again, slather on as much flux as you think you can get on there. When it comes to soldering, you should think of flux like lube. Too much is almost enough. So once it's all fluxed up, go ahead and tin those pads. Again, leaving nice dollops of solder on the pads so that we can easily get our resistors on there. And then using the tweezers, hold the surface mount resistors in place and just barely melt the solder and the resistor will stick. This is not an easy thing to do for somebody who's not super used to soldering, and in fact, even though I've done it a whole bunch of times, mine end up looking like absolute garbage. That's fine. They don't have to be pretty, they just have to be electrically connected. Next we're going to solder on the radio module, and this is the most difficult part of the project. First thing we're going to do is, of course, flux up all the pads and then tin those pads. Try to get as much on there as you can without actually bridging them. And you'll see why as soon as you lay the module on there. Obviously, you're going to want to flux that up as well. Look at the labels to make sure you've got the right pins on the right side. And then holding it in place with your tweezers or some other implement, you're going to very, very carefully solder like 2 corners to start, just to get everything lined up correctly. It ain't easy, especially the 2 where the pads are kind of half cut off. You may end up bridging pads like I did here. You can use solder wick to remove the excess solder and remove your accidental bridging. Just go slow. Don't worry if you have to redo it a couple of times, but in the end, all of the pads should be connected to the edge pads on the module. You're going to do the same thing on both sides. I'm sorry that it's blurry. For some reason, the phone wanted to focus on the solder and not the board itself. Just keep going until it looks like this, or ideally better than this. Okay, now to attach the Pro Micro, you're going to stick the pin headers through the bottom. The long end of the pin should go through the board and stick up through the top. You're going to flux up the holes on the Pro Micro, and then you're just going to solder the pins. This is much easier. The pins are a lot simpler than the edge connectors. Just take your time, a couple of seconds of heat, and it should flow nicely, and you're just going to do all the pins the same way. Once you've got all the pins soldered, you need to remove the excess parts of the pins on the other side of the board. That plastic holder there is just force fit on there, so you should be able to easily pry it up a little bit with your diagonal cutters, and then just cut the pins off level with the board. Don't try to do more than like 2, maybe 3 pins at a time. And every 4 pins or so, you can just go ahead and cut off that section of the header, and that will get it out of the way and make it a lot easier to do the next section of the header. Just try not to dick up the board too much when you're doing this. Err on the side of having a little bit of extra pin sticking out if you can. It doesn't have to be flush. So just do both sides so that the extra pin header is no longer there. Again, add flux, as much flux as you can cram in there, and then you'll just solder all of those points. Because you don't have a pin sticking up, it's just going to leave a nice little round ball of solder on there. Just make sure you give it like 2-3 seconds per connection for the solder to connect to the pin. And next we're going to do the battery. Now, when you cut off the connector on the battery, do not cut both sides at the same time. I cannot stress that enough. You will short the positive to the negative, and at best it will spark and scare you. At worst, it might actually weld to your cutter and cause a fire. So for right now, we're just cutting the black negative wire, and then we're stripping it, and then we're going to solder it to the battery terminal. First, we are going to flux and tin the battery connectors, and then we're just going to hold the wire in place and solder the black wire to the negative battery connector. Note the direction that we have the wires running. Now we're going to cut off the red positive wire and strip that as well. And we're going to solder that to one of the end connectors on the power switch. Doesn't matter which end. Just has to be on an end. The end that you're soldering it to, that's going to be the on position for the switch. So it's probably a good idea to flip that over into the off position right now. Now we're going to take a piece of spare wire, about 3 or 4 inches long, and solder that to the center connector on the power switch. And that wire from the center connector is going to go to the positive battery terminal. I should note that on newer versions of the board, the battery terminals are easier to solder to. This is an older version where they're a little bit trickier. Now we can go ahead and turn the switch on, and you should see a blinking red light. That means, hey, look, it works. At this point, we're going to go ahead and update the bootloader. This is a necessary step for most Pro Micro boards. You can just go to the GitHub page and download the latest version. In order to get the board into the correct mode, you need to do a double reset, which is easy if you have a button, but we don't. So we're just going to double tap the reset and ground connectors simultaneously, and you will see that the light changes from a flashing to a slow pulse. At this point, it should pop up in your computer as a flash drive. Just drag the file that you downloaded into this drive. It should automatically reboot and apply the bootloader update. Now we can go to the Meshtastic Web Flasher page to get the latest version of the firmware. Just click Select Target Device, scroll down to the community-supported devices and choose the NR52 Pro Micro DIY. That's what they call the Faketec on this page. There is no such thing as a stable version, so just get the latest beta. Stable is a lie. Don't even bother with the alphas. They're generally janky as hell, unless you have a specific problem. When you click that, you're going to get a changelog. It's got a bunch of stuff you don't need to read. Just scroll all the way down and hit continue, and that will get you to the actual download link. Just download that file, and you're going to double tap the reset and ground pins again to get it into flash drive mode and copy those files over. It takes longer than you'd think. Don't worry, it's fine. Just wait for it to finish, and then it'll automatically reboot and go into its correct mode. We're now ready to actually test to make sure it works. So we're going to attach the antenna and turn the device on. And after about a second or two, you'll get one long flash, and then the red light will just do very, very brief flashes that only even barely show up on camera. This is normal operation, and it means the firmware took. So that's a good thing. Next, you're going to download the Meshtastic app on the phone of your choosing. Open up that app, and at least on the Android version, you're going to go hit the button on the bottom right, that is the unit selector, and hit the scan button. It will start scanning for meshtastic nodes. It'll show you all the Bluetooth devices that it can see. Your meshtastic node will say meshtastic and then 4 random characters. Just tap that. It's going to ask you for a password. The default is 123456. Nice and easy. And there you go. It is now connected. Tap the menu button in the top right, then hit radio configuration and then LoRa, and this will allow you to set the only 2 things that really matter, the region and the hop limit. At this point, you should be able to send and receive messages on LongFast, which is the default, usually unencrypted channel that most people use for testing their new nodes. You're probably going to notice that your battery meter is all jacked up and not reading accurately. That's because you have to put in a fudge factor to account for the specific resistors you're using. If you're using 2 1 megohm resistors, the value should be 2.0. But for whatever reason, I had to change mine to 2.1 in order to get it to read correctly. What you're going to want to do is charge the battery fully so that it's at 4.2 volts, and then fiddle with the number until you're reading 100% or 4.2 volts in the battery monitor. Just keep in mind that the battery monitor does not update instantaneously. You're going to need to wait a couple of minutes for the number to update. Now, there are a ton of settings and features that I don't have time to get into here, but the one thing I did want to touch on is that if you go into radio configuration and then click channels, you can set up separate and secure channels so that you and your friends can communicate privately. You can give just hit the plus button at the bottom, give the channel a name, and it will automatically generate a random pre-shared key. You can then generate a QR code containing that key that you can show to anybody who you want to have access to your private channel. Now that your device is configured, it's probably best that we finish putting it back together. All you're going to do is drop the board into the case. Make sure you don't pinch any of the wires underneath of it. Then tuck the antenna into the antenna holder and kind of stuff it in there. Easy enough. Now you're going to put the switch in place and screw in the screws so that it doesn't fall out. Easy peasy. You're going to want to put something in between the battery and the board so that the pointy bits don't puncture the battery. I just like to cut off a piece of the anti-static bag, fold it in half. It also keeps the battery from, shaking around too much. And then just put the 2 halves together. Make sure you're not pinching any of the wires anywhere. Should be good to go. If you're doing the belt clip, just press the belt clip down and put the screws in. Make sure you don't over tighten the screws. You are just screwing into plastic. You don't want to strip them out. Do that on both sides, and the belt clip should be all set. And there you go. You now have a functional Faketec pager. You can turn it on and you should see a blinking light coming from the USB opening. You're now all set. Have fun and stay safe out there.